The first time Ivy invited me into her apartment, I already knew the city planned to tear it down. What I didn't know was that my signature had helped make it happen. I was 29 and worked as a structural safety engineer for Gray Line Development. That evening, I had spent 2 hours presenting our assessment of Haven Court, a century-old brick building containing 18 apartments and a small bookstore. My report described the building as unsafe and recommended demolition. The residents disagreed. Ivy disagreed louder than anyone. "You photographed cracks in the abandoned warehouse next door," she said during the public meeting. "Then you used them to condemn our homes." "That isn't what the report shows." "Have you personally inspected every area in those photographs?" I hesitated for half a second. I had reviewed the survey data, calculations, and images supplied by our field team. I had visited Haven Court once, but Max, my project manager, handled the restricted basement areas. That half second was enough for Ivy. "So you signed a report about a building you never completely inspected?" People began talking over one another. The meeting ended without a decision, and I left through the side entrance before anyone could continue the argument. Rain was falling hard enough to turn the street silver. I opened my umbrella and started toward the subway. Ivy stood beneath the narrow awning outside the community hall. Her dark hair was already wet, and she held a portfolio over her head. "You'll ruin that," I said. She looked at the umbrella. "Are you offering to share?" "I'm making an observation." "Very romantic." I wasn't trying to be. That part was obvious. I almost continued walking. Instead, I moved the umbrella toward her. Ivy stepped beneath it. 3 blocks, she said. "Then you're free of me." We walked close enough that our shoulders touched whenever we avoided a puddle. For the first block, neither of us spoke. Then Ivy looked at my shoes. "You dress too well for someone who destroys buildings." "I don't destroy them." "You only sign the paper." "I determine whether they're safe." "Without visiting the basement." I glanced at her. "You don't stop, do you?" "Not when someone plans to replace my home with luxury apartments." The rain struck the umbrella harder. Ivy told me she managed the bookstore on Haven Court's ground floor and lived in the apartment above it. Nell, the owner, had raised her after her mother died. "That building gave me a job, a room, and a family," she said. "You see damaged brick. I see every reason I stayed in this city." "Memories don't make a structure safe." "No, but numbers aren't always as honest as the people using them." I should have defended the report. Instead, I remembered my hesitation at the meeting. At the second intersection, Ivy stepped around a deep puddle and moved closer. Her hand touched mine on the umbrella handle. Neither of us pulled away immediately. "You're not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "Older." "I'm 29. "And already wearing the expression of a disappointed father." I laughed before I could stop myself. Ivy smiled. The argument between us changed after that. It didn't disappear, but the edges softened. She told me she illustrated children's books when the bookstore was quiet. I admitted I became an engineer because I trusted measurements more than instincts. "That sounds lonely," she said. "It's reliable. Those aren't the same thing." 3 blocks passed too quickly. Ivy stopped beneath the green awning of Haven Books. A narrow staircase beside the shop led to the apartments above. "This is me," she said. The rain flowed from the edge of the umbrella between us. I should have said goodnight. Instead, I looked through the bookstore window. Lamps glowed between crowded shelves, and hand-painted stars covered the ceiling. Ivy placed her key in the side door. Then she looked back at me. "You can come in," she said, "if you want." The pause between those final words made the invitation sound like something neither of us had planned. I followed her upstairs. Her apartment was small and warm. Sketches covered the walls, books filled every available surface, and 2 wine glasses stood beside the sink. Ivy took my wet coat and handed me a towel. Nell leaves glasses everywhere, she said after noticing where I was looking. I didn't ask. You were thinking loudly. She lit a lamp near the sofa. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We stood close enough for me to notice the rain caught in her eyelashes. Then I saw the red notice taped to the wall behind her. Building must be vacated in 10 days. Below it was a copy of Gray Line's structural assessment. My assessment. I crossed the room and lifted the final page. My signature appeared beneath the demolition recommendation. Ivy leaned against the table. You knew who I was before we shared the umbrella. Yes. Was any of that walk an accident? The rain was. You wanted me to come inside. I wanted you to see what your report looks like when it's hanging in someone's home. She placed a folder beside me. Inside were photographs of the foundation, the adjoining warehouse, and several measurements that did not match Gray Line's survey. I looked from the folder to Ivy. You invited me here to challenge my report. That was the plan. And now? Her eyes stayed on mine. Now I'm not sure that was the only reason. Then she tapped my signature. But you're still the reason I'm about to lose my home. I studied the photographs Ivy had placed in front of me. One showed a cracked concrete wall, identified in Gray Line's report as Haven Court's eastern foundation. But a faded shipping sign was visible in the corner. I recognized it. That wall belongs to the warehouse next door. That's what I told you at the meeting. Where did you get these? I took them myself. Ivy opened another folder containing dates, measurements, and apartment numbers. Several photographs used in our report had been labeled incorrectly. One claimed water damage from the bookstore basement came from a storage room 20 feet away. The errors were too consistent to dismiss. Why didn't you send this to Gray Line? We did. Max replied that the assessment was final. You contacted my manager? 3 times. I checked the email copies. Max had received the first message 2 weeks before I signed the final recommendation. He never forwarded it to me. Ivy poured water into a kettle. Still think I invited you in because I was lonely? I think you planned this conversation before we left the meeting. Yes. You could have spoken to me there. You were surrounded by your company's attorneys. I wanted you to see the building without people telling you what to think. So the walk was manipulation. At first. She looked toward me. Then you made me laugh. The kettle clicked off. Ivy prepared tea and placed a cup beside me. Our fingers touched against the handle. This time, neither of us pretended not to notice. Why did you really come upstairs? She asked. I wanted to see where you lived. Because of the report? Not entirely. Her smile lasted only a moment. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, and an older woman entered without knocking. Nell wore a raincoat over her pajamas and carried a long cardboard tube. You brought him, she said. Ivy sighed. Apparently, everyone planned tonight except me. Nell placed the tube on the table and unrolled Haven Court's original blueprints. The plans showed a second support frame behind the brick foundation. It had been installed during renovations 40 years earlier. Gray Line's report never mentioned it. If this frame still exists, I said, the building may not require demolition. It exists, Nell replied. I watched them install it. Why isn't this plan in the city archive? The previous owner never submitted the renovation records. Without official verification, the blueprint alone would not overturn our assessment. But it justified a complete reinspection. I took photographs of the plans. I'll examine the basement tomorrow. Ivy folded her arms. Max already refused. I'm not asking Max. You could lose your job. I signed the report. If it's wrong, my job is already part of the problem. Nell left us with the blueprints. I stayed at Ivy's table until nearly 2 in the morning, comparing her photographs with Gray Line's survey. The farther I went, the less accidental the mistakes appeared. When I finally stood to leave, Ivy walked me downstairs. The rain had stopped. "Do you regret coming in?" she asked. "I haven't decided. You usually need this long?" "I like complete information." Ivy stepped closer. "And what information are you missing?" I looked at her mouth, then at the umbrella beside the door. Whether she had invited me upstairs to challenge my work or because she wanted me there no longer felt like two different questions. "I'll tell you after the inspection," I said. Very romantic. I'm still not trying to be. That's becoming harder to believe. The next morning, Max called before I reached the office. "I heard you went inside Haven Court." "Who told you?" "The developer has cameras near the property. I found problems in our survey. The assessment is finished. You received evidence from Ivy before I signed. She sent complaints, not evidence. She identified photographs from the wrong building." Max lowered his voice. "The demolition vote is in 10 days. Do not reopen the report. If it's wrong, I'm withdrawing my signature. If you do that without authorization, you won't have a position to return to." He ended the call. An hour later, Ivy sent me the access code for the basement. Beneath it was a screenshot she hadn't meant to include. A travel confirmation. One-way ticket to Denver. Departure in 12 days. I called her. "You're leaving?" Silence. Then Ivy answered. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "After you decided whether my home was worth saving." The call ended. I had 10 days to correct my report. And 12 days before the woman who had changed it disappeared from my city. I met Ivy outside Haven Court at 6 the next morning. She wore work boots and carried 2 coffees. "Bribery?" I asked. "Insurance against your personality." We entered through the bookstore and descended into the basement. Nell had already unlocked the maintenance rooms. The air smelled of dust and damp concrete. Ivy followed while I photographed beams, measured cracks, and compared each location with Grayline's report. Within an hour, I found the hidden support frame. The steel showed surface corrosion but no serious deformation. More importantly, the largest cracks in our assessment didn't exist anywhere inside Haven Court. "They used the warehouse photographs," Ivy said. "Yes." "So the building is safe?" "It needs repairs, but it shouldn't be demolished based on this report." Ivy released a breath. Then she hugged me. The movement surprised both of us. Her arms remained around me for a second longer than necessary before she stepped back. "That was for the building," she said. "Of course. Don't look pleased. I'm documenting the moment." For the next 3 days, we inspected Haven Court before I went to work and after Ivy closed the bookstore. I met the residents I had previously known only as unit numbers. One was a nurse who worked nights. Another was a widower who had lived there for 36 years. None could afford the new development planned for the site. Ivy knew every name. She also knew which staircase squeaked, which child hid comic books behind the history section, and when Nell needed help carrying boxes but refused to ask. On the 4th evening, Ivy found me reviewing calculations behind the bookstore counter. "You haven't asked about Denver again," she said. "I assumed you'd tell me when you wanted." "I received an illustration contract with a publishing studio." "For how long?" 1 year. "That's why you're leaving?" "That and the eviction notice. If Haven Court is saved, will you stay?" Ivy sat opposite me. "I've spent most of my life staying because someone needed me. Denver is the first thing I chose only for myself." I understood then that saving her home and asking her to remain were not the same thing. "I'm not asking you to give it up." "You looked like you wanted to." "I'm still collecting information." She smiled. That expression is becoming less convincing. We ate takeout between stacks of books.
Ivy asked why I trusted plans more than people. I told her about my former fiancé. She used to accuse me of treating every choice like an engineering problem. When she received a job offer abroad, I made a list of practical reasons we should separate instead of admitting I wanted her to stay. She left, I said.
And I pretended the outcome proved my reasoning was correct. Was it? No. Ivy traced a circle through the condensation on her glass. I usually leave first. Why? Then I never have to wait for someone to decide I'm too complicated. The bookstore had gone quiet around us. Ivy stood and moved beside my chair. Her hand rested against the counter near mine. This time, when she leaned closer, neither of us had an argument left to hide behind. I touched her cheek. Her lips almost reached mine. Then I stopped. Ivy stepped back. Complete information? I don't know whether you want me or need me to save the building. Her face changed. You think I can't separate those things? I think neither of us has tried. She collected the empty containers. You should go. I left without kissing her. At my apartment, I opened Greyline's archived survey files. The original upload showed correct locations for the basement photographs. A second version had been created 3 days later. The building labels were changed. The warehouse cracks became Haven Court cracks, and the hidden steel frame disappeared from the summary. I checked the revision history. The alterations came from Max's administrator account. But the final approval carried only one name: mine. Max was already in his office when I arrived the next morning. I placed the 2 survey versions on his desk. You changed the locations. He glanced at the revision history. The field team corrected the labels. They replaced Haven Court photographs with images from the warehouse. The buildings share a foundation line. They don't share walls. Max closed the files. The original survey was incomplete. The developer needed a final assessment before the financing deadline. So you manufactured one. I made a professional judgment. With my signature. You reviewed the report. You removed the original data before I reviewed it. Max walked to the window. Greyline was competing for a contract worth more than every project I had completed in my career combined. If the demolition vote passed, Max had promised me leadership of the new development. You're being considered for promotion, he said. Don't throw that away because a tenant made you feel guilty. This isn't about Ivy. Then why were you in her basement before sunrise? I ignored the question. Haven Court can be repaired. Maybe, but the developer won't fund repairs, and the city doesn't have the money. That doesn't make our report true. It makes demolition the outcome everyone can afford. Not the people living there. Max studied me. A week ago, they were names on a document. Now you're risking your career for them? A week ago, I trusted the document. I placed a signed letter on his desk. It withdrew my approval from the Haven Court assessment and requested an independent inspection. Max read it once. If you file this, I have to suspend you. I already sent it to the city. His phone rang almost immediately. I left before he answered. By noon, my company access had been revoked. By 2, Greyline placed me on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. I told myself I had made the decision because the report was wrong. That was true. It was not the whole truth. I went to Haven Books that evening. Ivy was packing illustrated prints into a box. Her Denver ticket lay on the counter. You withdrew your signature, she said. How did you hear? Max called Nell. He said you compromised the project after becoming personally involved with a resident. That's his defense. He also said you were suspended. I expected it. Ivy set down the tape. You shouldn't have done this. Because I might lose my job? Because you'll eventually blame me. I made the decision, after meeting me, after seeing evidence. She turned away. I don't want to become the story you tell about why your life fell apart. You didn't destroy anything. You lost your promotion. I lost an opportunity based on a lie. And when Haven Court is demolished anyway, then I'll still have corrected my part. Ivy folded her arms. Finn, I'm leaving in 8 days. I know. This isn't the beginning of something. You invited me inside to show you the report that stopped being the only reason. Her expression softened, but she didn't move closer. That's exactly why I need to leave. Because you want to? Because wanting something has never made it stay. I stepped toward her. I'm not your building, Ivy. No. You're the man who just risked everything to save it. I didn't do that for you. The words hurt her before I could finish. I did it because it was right. You're the reason I looked long enough to see it. Ivy's eyes met mine. For one moment, I thought she might close the space between us. Instead, she handed me the box of inspection photographs. You should go. My phone rang as I reached the door. It was the city clerk. The developer had requested an emergency vote, claiming my withdrawal threatened public safety. The council moved the demolition decision forward. The hearing would take place Friday morning. 48 hours away. If I wanted to save Haven Court, I needed an independent report, a repair plan, and someone willing to believe an unemployed 29-year-old engineer over the company that had just suspended him. Behind me, Ivy sealed the box containing her work for Denver. The building had 48 hours. She had 8 days. And I was running out of time to save either future. I spent the next 48 hours proving my own report wrong. An independent engineer agreed to inspect Haven Court after reviewing Nell's original blueprints. Ivy opened every apartment, documented the residents' needs, and turned my repair estimates into a proposal the council could understand. We worked through both nights. Ivy remained professional. No arguments about Denver, no conversations about the almost kiss inside the bookstore. At 6 Friday morning, the independent assessment arrived. Haven Court required foundation reinforcement, new drainage, and repairs to 2 exterior walls. The work would be expensive, but it cost less than 1/3 of demolition and rebuilding. The building was not in immediate danger. At the hearing, Max sat beside Grayline's attorneys. I sat with Ivy, Nell, and the residents. The developer presented first. He described my withdrawal as the result of an inappropriate personal relationship. When my turn came, I displayed the 2 survey versions. The original photographs were correctly labeled, I said. 3 days later, images from the neighboring warehouse were reassigned to Haven Court. A council member looked toward Max. Who made those changes? The revision history identifies an administrator account belonging to Grayline's project manager. Max stood. The final report was reviewed by Mr. Finn Mercer. After the source data was replaced, I said. I presented Nell's blueprints, current photographs, and the independent assessment. Then I withdrew my signature from every conclusion based on the altered survey. The council questioned Max for 20 minutes. He admitted receiving Ivy's evidence before the final report. He called it an unverified tenant complaint and said the developer's deadline made further inspection impractical. That answer ended the hearing. The demolition permit was denied pending a rehabilitation plan. The city also referred Grayline's report for professional review. No one declared Haven Court permanently saved. But no bulldozer could touch it. Outside, residents surrounded Ivy and Nell. Ivy laughed as the night shift nurse lifted her off the ground. I stood several feet away. Max passed me on the courthouse steps. You made certain you'll never work for Grayline again. I know. You chose a condemned building over your career. I chose not to condemn it with a lie. He walked away. Ivy found me after the crowd dispersed. What happens now? She asked. I resign before they finish firing me. And the building? The independent engineer needs someone to design the reinforcement plan. Her eyes narrowed.
You?
If Mel hires me. Mel, standing behind her, said, "Try being affordable." For the next 6 days, Ivy and I worked on the rehabilitation proposal. She designed a community studio for the empty upper floor, while I revised the structure and budget. Neither of us mentioned her departure until the final evening. Her suitcase stood beside the bookstore counter. "I'm leaving tomorrow morning," she said. "Remember, you could ask me to stay." "I could. Are you going to?" "No." Ivy looked away. "This job matters to you," I said. "I won't turn saving the building into a debt you owe me." "What if I wanted you to ask?" "Then I'd still want you to go for the right reason." Her train left at 9 the next morning. I arrived at the station 6 minutes before departure. Ivy stood near the platform with her suitcase and portfolio. "I thought you weren't asking me to stay." "I'm not." "Then why are you here?" "Because last time someone I loved left, I gave her a list of reasons it was practical." Ivy's expression changed. "I'm not doing that again." "What are you doing?" "Telling you I want this." "This?" "You and me, whatever it becomes." She looked toward the train. "I'll be gone for a year. Your first contract is 3 months." "You remembered." "I like complete information." Ivy smiled. I stepped. "I'm not asking you to stay. I'm asking you not to decide there can't be an us because the distance scares you." "What if it doesn't work?" "Then at least the outcome won't be something we chose before trying." The boarding announcement began. Ivy placed one hand against my chest. "You took too long to kiss me in the bookstore." "I was missing information. Do you have enough now?" I kissed her before she could say anything else. When we separated, the train doors were closing. Ivy grabbed her suitcase and reached them just in time. Through the window, she held up her phone. A message arrived before the train moved. 3 months, then we reevaluate. I typed my answer. Very romantic. Her reply came immediately. "I learned from you." The train pulled away. For the first time in my life, uncertainty didn't feel like structural failure. It felt like something worth building. Ivy stayed in Denver for 3 months. We didn't pretend long distance was romantic. Video calls froze. Flights were delayed. Twice, work forced us to cancel weekends we had planned for weeks. But neither of us disappeared when the relationship became inconvenient. I sent her photographs of Haven Court's repairs. She sent me illustrations from the book she was designing. Every Sunday, we reviewed our 3-month agreement. Neither of us chose to end it. After leaving Grayline, I opened a small consulting office. My first project was Haven Court. The professional review confirmed Max had knowingly allowed altered data into the report. Grayline removed him from the project and settled with the building's residents. I wasn't offered my old job back. I didn't want it. Working independently meant fewer guarantees and longer hours, but every signature belonged to a conclusion I had verified myself. When Ivy's first contract ended, the Denver studio offered her a permanent position. She called me before responding. "This is the part where you make a practical list," she said. "I already made one." "Of course you did." "Denver pays more. Staying gives you Haven Court's community studio. Both are good choices." That wasn't helpful. "You didn't ask which job to choose. You asked what I wanted." Silence followed. "I want you here," I said, "but I don't want you here if loving me becomes the reason you resent your life." Ivy returned 1 week later. Not only for me, Nell and the residents hired her to manage the bookstore's new creative space. The Denver studio kept her as a remote illustrator, allowing her to travel several times a year. She didn't sacrifice one future to choose another. She redesigned both. 6 months after our first walk beneath the umbrella, Haven Court reopened. The foundation was reinforced, the damaged walls were repaired, and every resident returned to their apartment. The empty upper floor became an affordable studio for local artists. Ivy painted 3 blue blocks across one wall. Beneath them, she added a small black umbrella. "That's subtle," I said. "I don't know what you mean." After the opening celebration, rain began falling outside. I found my old umbrella behind the bookstore counter. Ivy stepped beneath it without waiting for permission. We walked 3 blocks, even though her apartment remained directly upstairs. She claimed we needed to recreate the conditions accurately. "You know we're walking away from your door," I said. "Stop questioning the methodology." At the 3rd intersection, we turned around and walked back. Our shoulders touched. This time, neither of us pretended it was because of the rain. At the bookstore entrance, Ivy placed her key in the lock and looked over her shoulder. "You can come in," she said, "if you want." I was hoping you'd ask. She didn't open the door. Instead, she took a second key from her pocket and placed it in my hand. "This isn't an invitation to move in tomorrow." "Good. I need to inspect the staircase first." "Very romantic." "I learned from you." I closed my fingers around the key. The first time Ivy invited me inside, she wanted me to see what my signature was about to destroy. The second time, she was asking whether I wanted to become part of what we had rebuilt. I kissed her beneath the green awning while rain ran from the umbrella beside us. For most of my life, I believed safe choices created stable futures. Ivy taught me that safety without honesty was only another way of avoiding risk. Some things couldn't be proven before they began. They had to be built carefully, checked often, and trusted one choice at a time. If someone you cared about received an opportunity far away, would you ask them to stay, or let them go and try to build something across the distance? Tell me what you would choose. And if you believe the right person can change the way you understand home, stay for the next story.